Hello fellow YouTubers, this is a Courier Centurion PLL. This was the first 40 channel version of these radios. There are three versions. The first Courier Centurion, it was just labeled Courier Centurion, and it was a 23 channel. Looks exactly the same as this radio. Mechanical dial readout, but of course it only went to 23. The second version is the radio I'm showing right here, the Courier Centurion PLL. Third version was a Courier Centurion 40D, and really the only difference was, instead of a mechanical dial readout like older radios had, it had a LED, a red LED digital, channel display. Same radio. Both of the late model 40 channel versions. Let's see if I can get the meter clear here. I'm on lower sideband. I'm very much so a sidebander. Both 40 channel versions are Uniden 858 chassis. I do believe the Courier Centurions vary a little bit construction wise as far as the board, compared to the other 858s like the Robin 520D, and there's a number of others. There was a T-Berry, one or two models of T-Berry 40 channel sideband AM, radios that were 858s made by Uniden, and a lot of other brands as well. Uniden made radios for a lot of different brands. A lot of people think that a lot of the common brands from back in the old days built their own radios, but that's actually not the truth. The biggest makers probably from this era of this radio, the late 70s, would have been Uniden, which switched manufacturing facilities through the years. I think this one's made in Japan. I think shortly after this they went to Taiwan. There was a stint in Hong Kong. I don't know how long or in what time period they made them there, and then eventually, of course, they moved to the Philippines. And I think today it's maybe China. I don't know. I'm not into newer radios at all. The other big maker of the time period of this radio would have been Cybernet. They were all made in Japan. They made a great deal of radios as well. The vast majority, if not all, of your General Electric radios, and a whole host of other, popular brands from back in the day were Cybernet chassis. A lot of those were O2A, PLL. I do believe the Sears Road Talker series, not all of them. I know there's some late Sears Road Talkers that are made by Uniden, but most of them were Cybernet radios as well. And I have some of those that I'll be showing eventually. This radio was an eBay find. It was it was an excellent deal. It was mislisted. It was missing these outer clock knobs that you see here. This dual control, it has the inner was there, but the outer was missing. This outer, which is a single control, was missing as well. The knobs that are on there now come from a Courier. I think it's a Conqueror 40D. Or I take that back. No, it is a Conqueror 40D that I have. It has some pretty significant issues, so these knobs are not 100% correct, but they definitely look better than just bare steel shafts. As I received the radio, the only thing I had to do to this particular radio, the receive lamp was out. The on-the-air lamp worked. Like you can see, it still does. One of the there's two bulbs behind this bluish lens for the channel readout. One of them was burned out. All these bulbs are just standard little wheat lamps, and that's what I replaced them with. Both meters do function correctly on this radio. I'm on my ground plane right now. I'm using for vertical a Stereo SD27 dipole and vertical polarization. I have a 2-element delta loop as well, the little Mako V quad, but conditions right now, DX is running out of a lot of different directions. I've heard California, Texas, Louisiana, New York, New Jersey, Northeast Canada. So for now, I think the vertical is vertical Omni is probably the best way to go. The only control on this radio that was scratchy when I got it was the pull in and out tone control. Surprisingly enough, I don't think this radio had been used in a number of years. It was extremely filthy. It had a lot of built up dust and grunge. I really had to scrub the top. The top is got a fair number of scratches. I think that's showing up, somewhat decently. Some of them made it over to the aluminum trim. The wood sides, again, this is not a perfect radio. I personally don't like collector grade perfect radios because, well, it's about impossible to keep them that way if you use them, and I use all my radios. This radio, it's one of my favorites. The receive is excellent. I know this is touted to have the best adjacent channel rejection, I think, of any transistor radio, and I believe possibly the tube types. Don't quote me on that. I have not, went and compared all of the specs of various vintage radios to confirm that. That's just, a little bit of reading and a little bit I've seen in some other videos, talking about this particular rig. The receive is excellent. It is definitely on par with my with HR2510 in the President Lincoln export version, with this Elan 9001. This is nothing but an Emperor TS5010. I think they called it the Shogun, overseas. It's just a clone of those radios. There's my Lincoln that I use quite a bit, although I've been using vintage radios a bit more in recent times. It's a very late model Lincoln. This is one of the French ones, made in January 2004. It uses an MRF455 flange mount transistor. But the receive of this radio is on par. I think the selectivity is maybe not quite as good on AM. It picks up a little bit of white noise, hash and trash, a little bit more so than, say, like my Lincoln does. Nothing significant. It's still a pleasure to listen to on AM. The sideband is phenomenal. It is a very quiet, very sensitive, but very quiet. It just doesn't pick up all the hash and trash. There's 606 New York. I'm sure a lot of you've heard him if you listen to 38 Lower Side Much. He's a regular operator on there. I heard just a little bit ago Needlebender 67 out of Texas as well. He's another regular. As mentioned, I'm very much so a sidebander. I do talk AM a little bit as well. But for 11 meter CB, especially this time of year, E-skip season, you generally are going to find me somewhere on sideband, on 38 lower side quite a bit, but I do get around. I listen probably more than I talk, but I do work a number of stations off and on. Kind of depends on how I feel. I've got some health issues, and some days listening is all I feel like doing. I don't know if I mentioned this, but the clock does work on this radio. It's amazing for these mechanical dial types. It's my first video. I know this is not the greatest presentation in the world. I've never been a photographer or a videoer. Just skills I don't really possess, but I have a decent sized vintage radio collection. I decided I wanted to start sharing them because I'm always looking on YouTube for new videos of classic radios, and a very good friend of mine that just lives down the street from me shares the same two-way radio bug / hobby addiction. He called it a little bit of everything, and I think you know, maybe through me and my classic radio madness, I've got him interested again in classic radios. He's actually been on the air longer than I have. He started as a kid, and I didn't start until I was a teenager. Then he does the same thing as I do, searching YouTube, you know, looking for those vintage radio videos. So I hope you folks enjoy this. And again, my apologies. It's not professional, the best quality or anything. This is my first Centurion, Courier Centurion PLL 40 channel mechanical dial readout. Excellent radio and one of my favorites. Hopefully everybody out there interested in classic radios can find one of these as well. And I don't know if I mentioned this one. This one, believe it or not, is stock. No channels, never been tuned, modulation's never been clipped. These radios, finding them working is probably unusual, and I'd say factory untouched like this is probably rare in this day and age now, because most of these were modified with channels, or at very least, were tuned. And at one time when I was younger, I was all about getting every watt out of a radio I could, or every channel possible, but I'm not that same person anymore. I much prefer factory stock radios, or maybe just slightly turn up the ALC for sideband to get a little better output. It's about the extent of anything I do to them. This radio will stay untouched. ALC hasn't been touched, nothing else. Well, folks, I'll quit rattling on. Say 73s to all of you. Maybe I'll catch you on the band sometime soon. Take care.